What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the podcast. Hope everyone's having a great day. I know I'm having a great day because this past Friday was my birthday. So yeah, I know, birthday boy, all that stuff. Yeah, I can say I had a good time with when it came in terms of my birthday. Went out to the city, enjoyed myself, got something to eat with the family, had a blast. It was simple yet very, very nice. And I don't mind simplicity at times, and it doesn't need to be too over the top. But also, enough about me being a year older. It got me to reflect on things, and something that really got me thinking about my childhood is seeing Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, and the big ticket Kevin Garnett all going into the Hall of Fame this past weekend. And then seeing the class of 2021 and seeing that Paul Pierce is on the ballot, and Paul Pierce is going to be a Hall of Famer this time next year. And just thinking about that is just crazy to me because I grew up watching those guys play. It really, really puts into perspective how time really goes by. It's in the moment, it doesn't feel like time's going by all that fast, but then when you think about it again, time has just flown, so it's just like it just passes you by. I think that's just absolutely nuts, but that, But yeah, we got just a deep dive into some of these guys and like my thoughts of them while watching them as a kid and growing up and even watching their careers play out and seeing like the impacts they all left on the game, mainly in terms. You can say all three of these guys left their mark on the game in their own way. Kobe, we all know with the Mamba mentality, might as well just try to honor Kobe and. Well, I mean, what's there to say that hasn't already been said? Dude is top 10 player of all time. Top 10, top 15 at the minimum. And then you can even argue that he's in the top 5. And even some people say he's the greatest of all time. And that's a discussion for a different day. And yeah, and like I know everybody's felt the pain when that tragic day came. And then we lost him and his daughter, and then everybody else on that tragic day. But the fact that how the world reacted, the basketball world, and how just people around, and like you had people, just everybody wanted to honor Kobe in their own way, whether it was painting a mural of him in LA, to even as small as even in NBA 2K, people were doing the 24-second violations to honor Kobe while they were playing on that day. That's how much Kobe meant to everybody who loved the game of basketball. And the fact that you can use the Mamba mentality in anything that you do because it's your representation of the Mamba mentality. It's you going out and just never say die attitude. Like every one of these guys, Tim Duncan and KG, all these guys were warriors, and Kobe played the game like he left it all out on the floor. And it's just a shame with this whole Achilles thing, how his career really could have turned out and all that. So, but yeah, Kobe first ballot Hall of Famer, absolutely. Whether the circumstances were different at all, as soon as he was available to go into the Hall, he was going. And now quite honestly, you can say happy Mamba Day, happy Hall of Fame. The Mamba's in the Hall of Fame. But now let's talk about Timmy D. Let's talk about Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan, I wouldn't say I watched because I kind of watched all these guys equally, but Tim Duncan was the last one of these guys to retire, I believe. I'm not sure. It was it's a battle between him and KG because we all know Kobe retired in 2016 with the 60-point game and all that. But Tim Duncan, I believe, retired. I think Tim Duncan retired that same year, but he just didn't tell anybody that. And yeah, that's how he went out. He just out of nowhere just said he was retiring, and shoot, he retired the year before the Warriors even became a thing. So he knew something we didn't. But and that all the respect to Tim Duncan because he was Kawhi Leonard before Kawhi Leonard, and when it came to personality and whatnot. But it was funny because Tim Duncan and Kawhi were both just very awkward. Obviously, there's a big discrepancy between the two because one left while the other stayed. And obviously, Tim Duncan played his, I believe, 20-year career in San Antonio. and he won himself 5 championships. And most definitely, I think he was one of those players who were just like, who was put into the NBA at the right time, maybe a few years later. But either way, dude comes in his rookie year, helps his team win a championship, and he becomes the focal point of winning those Spurs championship team. Well, part of those Spurs championship teams, for at least another 2 or 3 of those, and then it was Kawhi who helped him capture another one. But it was one thing him being, hey, I'm the best player here. It was mainly championships and among MVPs and all the accolades all these guys had. And just to bring Kobe up again, and quite honestly, all these guys probably should have won more than just the one MVP, because I believe Tim Duncan only had the one MVP, and I know KG won his MVP in 2004 and then Kobe in 2008, which is, I feel pretty. In Kobe's case, I feel Kobe definitely should have had at least maybe 2 or 3 to his name, and there's definitely a couple of seasons we can argue. But when it terms of the Tim Duncan, I feel all these guys really don't care all that much about MVPs. And probably if it says finals in front of it, because that means, hey, they got a championship, because that was the big thing for all these guys, was winning. And Tim Duncan was probably the winningest out of all these guys when it comes to team success and whatnot. And then you got Kobe right after him, and then obviously KG, who kind of we'll talk more about in a little bit. But with Tim Duncan, he's exactly what his nickname was, a big fundamental. He wasn't the flashiest guy on the court, and he wasn't like, dude was just another level. But the fact that he can break you down the way he could and how he went about him, he was a constant professional. Whether his I feel we call that a professional personality. Like, he wasn't over the top. He had his moments, don't get me wrong. You can search on YouTube Tim Duncan moments, and then you can see him getting a technical foul for laughing and whatnot. So, and even those Spurs commercials, those are always pretty funny to watch. But yeah, Tim Duncan, the fact that Tim Duncan was so successful, and the fact that he didn't want to go out the way like a Kobe Bryant would have, like when it comes to wrapping up his NBA career, I find that, I guess in the moment I wasn't really all that surprised, but shoot, hey man, Tim Duncan, big fundamental, that's right there. But then we got to talk about, I would say the person I watched the most out of all 3 of these guys when it comes to playing, but I kind of wish I was able to see all these guys in their prime. Like, it makes me think, like, I wish I was able to get into basketball sooner, just to see these great players to play in their heyday. Like, I watched Kobe, a couple of Kobe games I can recall when I was younger, while Kobe was still in his prime, still tearing up the league. And I remember watching Celtics games with KG and Paul Pierce and Rondo, and like those guys are all still, that band of Warriors were still over there and trying to capture that championship 18. But when it comes to Kevin Garnett, I'd say he was one of those players that I loved looking back at the fact that KG, I feel everyone wanted to have the mentality of a Kevin Garnett, because KG is, I feel people admired KG the same way we admire Westbrook today when it comes to their intensity. Obviously, I feel KG was definitely maybe the most intense player to ever play the game. But when it comes to the fact that this dude, it was all about loyalty with all 3 of these guys, quite honestly. Granted, there was even though KG was the only player out of these 3 to jump to different teams and whatnot. He couldn't win a championship with the team that drafted him, but the fact that he put 12 years of his NBA career, pretty much his whole physical prime anyway, to the Timberwolves and make it into the Western Conference Finals and the MVP season, when I was just a mere 3 years old, so I wouldn't remember really anything of that. And I know damn well I wasn't watching basketball then, but when he was in Boston and he got the chip in Boston, I feel that it meant as much, like, I feel he would even say, because he did say during his speech, he said that he wished he got to Boston sooner. And just thinking about that, in hindsight, I can just like that would just be nasty, even if it was just prime KG with Paul Pierce, and then you still had Rondo on the come up, and you still had some of these guys. I don't know if they would still make the Ray Allen deal, quite honestly, but just to see how certain things would have played out, because I think KG he was very loyal to that franchise, and he was looking for, last time I checked, he was looking to purchase the Timberwolves, but I don't know how that's going to work out now, since I believe that there's a new ownership group, obviously with A-Rod and whatnot, I think at the top of it. But when it comes to, I feel KG will get his hands on an NBA team when it comes to purchasing one. And I did see things flying around that the Celtics were looking to add KG as like a player consultant or like an assistant coach or something. And I feel KG, barring his intensity and all that, KG with that included, I feel he could really be a positive on NBA players, because I know even to this day you got guys like Nick Claxton. Not Nick Claxton. Actually, yeah, I think Nick Claxton, if I'm remembering correctly, kid in Brooklyn with the dreadlocks, plays center, and yeah, I feel he's trying to replicate what KG was, because I believe that was his favorite player. But what I have to say about that is, like, it's kind of hard to try to match that intensity, because it would kind of look like you're just trying to copy it directly off of KG. Like KG, he don't care who you are. He's gonna treat you like such, and he's gonna let you know that he's gonna put you on your ass. He's gonna do this, that, and the other. That was what was fun about looking back and watching KG play, and how he went about, like, in the media talking about Carmelo and all this. He didn't, like, dude was an absolute Hall of Famer, whether it was basketball, whether it was talking trash. Like, if there was a Hall of Fame for talking trash, you got Larry Bird, you got KG, who else? Shoot. I mean, there's plenty. But just name those two guys. I mean, I was thinking Celtics anyway. But yeah, just seeing, like, KG, man, that's all three of these guys were just nasty, absolute filth. But then looking forward to next year, and I see Paul Pierce. For those who know, Paul Pierce, my favorite player, and the way the dude went about playing for Boston, Jason Tatum's gonna have to put a Paul Pierce-like performance these upcoming playoffs and whatnot. Even though when it comes to the Celtics getting into the play-in, being 7th seed and whatnot, and I'm not entirely sure, but I'll get to that in a little bit. But going back to the Hall of Fame class, those guys really captured the imaginations of kids and fans everywhere for their respective franchises. Like, you can argue all three of those guys are the best, the very best of each of their respective franchises. KG with Minnesota, and obviously Tim, Duncan, and Kobe with the Spurs and Lakers. And KG is definitely like an all-time great Celtic as well. And then I wouldn't even want to remember his time in Brooklyn. I mean, shouts to Brooklyn for Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. But hey, I guess you guys weren't too bad. Had some fun years with D'Lo and company, and then you have the big three of Harden, Durant, and Kyrie. So you got that. So I guess it wasn't all that bad. It seems like everything worked out in there for you guys. But when it comes to, I feel it's just, I wish that fans were in attendance and whatnot. It feels like the atmosphere would have been a whole lot different, because seeing them give their speeches and whatnot, and still understanding that, like, the world still is what it is. I feel these guys deserve a lot more of a reception. Should even throw Kobe a parade when the Lakers enjoy their championship parade. But yeah, on the topic of, I don't want to deep dive too far into the playoffs, but that would be for a future episode coming real soon, so keep an eye out for that. But when it comes to the Celtics, yeah, 7th seed and guys are out. We analyze the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference, and we're gonna dive into, like, our Rookie of the Year predictions and our MVP predictions and whatnot. Obviously, we had guys like Tim Duncan and KG. They got their hardware, they got their Hall of Fame rings, and then I want to talk about the guys who are going to get their hardware at the end of the year. And I find it very weird that they announce these regular season awards after the playoffs are done. Don't do that. I quite honestly, I know it was a way to like kind of get more revenue into the NBA, but what I believe they should do, they should have that, just bring it back to normal. Get it back to normal and have guys get rewarded with their respective awards in front of their home crowd. And yeah, especially the MVP. They should, or even if you want to hold out the accomplishment, if you want to still try to do the award show, I'd say at least announce the MVP. Have the MVP votes. Excuse me. Have the MVP award presented before the playoffs even start, even if it's that and the defensive player of the year. But it's a very weird thing. But I don't like the award show, and especially if you're highlighting a regular season after the playoffs and whatnot. It was with Giannis when he got rewarded with his MVP, and yeah, it was he wasn't the talk of the town anymore. They were talking about Kawhi because it was in 2019 when the Raptors won their chip, so. And it's a regular season award. The playoffs shouldn't really impact how the regular season awards get distributed, and that's why I don't like it being where it's at. But yeah, that's just my little rant on the subject. But going back and seeing how the award show went when it comes to the Hall of Fame speeches and whatnot, I feel it was a very, very touching moment seeing MJ and Vanessa Bryant inducting Kobe, because it's always like Kobe, obviously to everyone, I would like to believe that Kobe was the second coming of MJ, and quite honestly, if it wasn't for the Achilles, like I've mentioned before, if it wasn't for some years, like just imagine how Kobe could have still been playing at a high level even around 2016, 2017 if he didn't get hurt. And I believe Kobe retired, I think, just before 35, if I remember correctly, because I believe Kobe passed at 41. So yeah, I think he probably could have played until he was 37, 38. He probably could have even played with like LeBron would have been there, and I might have been Kobe's last season. Who knows if Kobe and LeBron ever played? But the matchups that you could have thought, like imagine LeBron versus Kobe in the finals, and whatnot. It just sucks seeing injuries really try to knock a player's career down a few notches. But the fact that Kobe was just so good, and granted, all these guys, I believe, excluding Tim Duncan, because Tim Duncan, I rarely remember dude getting hit with like a really, really nasty injury. But when it came to KG with his knee, I believe in the 2009 season actually, and then Kobe obviously with his Achilles. Those guys, it's crazy to see how good these guys were. It was even surprising to see Tracy McGrady go in the Hall of Fame, because these guys were just it's appreciating the amount of greatness that each of these players gave or just exposed to everyone. Because the fact that obviously their 2 out of their 3 careers didn't end I feel the way they wanted it to, but the fact that we don't look at how the career ended, we look at the dominance and the greatness and the championships, and we look at the accolades, and we looked at how the players carried themselves on the court as well as off the court, So I feel it's fun to think back, just to say the least, just to kind of tie a bow on this whole topic, because those guys were just everything to a lot of people that came up loving this game, and people respecting the guys who came before them, just champions and all-time greats, So that's how much I'm going to say when it comes to those guys. Congratulations to all 3 of them. And now we're on to the point of the podcast where we talk about the miscellaneous kind of round table, just trying to wrap everything in, just try to give my thoughts on certain things, So when we're switching gears to baseball, and seeing that Albert Pujols was released by the Angels, I believe in April, a couple weeks into the new baseball season, and now he's going to the Dodgers. And for all those baseball fans out there that know, Albert Pujols was a St. Louis Cardinal, and that's how he came up, and that's where he did most of his damage throughout his illustrious career. And what I have to think when him going to the Dodgers, I mean, the Dodgers have kind of been struggling ever since I believe Cody Bellinger's hurt, but when it comes to Albert Pujols, I feel now he's just kind of a platoon guy who can mash left-handed pitching and whatnot. He'll probably play some games, but that's kind of what you would want him there for. I would have liked to see him go to St. Louis, and this is my opinion for all the major sports. So you got all the major sports I really keep track of is baseball and basketball and maybe a little bit of football. But when it comes to players that are synonymous with a franchise like Paul Pierce in Boston or Kobe with the Lakers or Tom Brady with the Patriots, so granted, like, the situation's different, but you got and then in baseball you had guys like Derek Jeter with the Yankees and whatnot. I feel guys who were to leave, I feel it's always nice to just have their career come full circle and end the career where they started, or end the career where they did their damage, and kind of made a name for themselves. So Albert Pujols going to the Dodgers, I feel it's weird, but I mean, hey, I think he wants to at least get another ring before it's all said and done. And the Dodgers really do have a good chance, but we just got to see them step it up. And I'm not complaining. My Red Sox are in first place, so your boy's happy. But yeah, as we mentioned, the Hall of Fame class of 2021 for the Basketball Hall of Fame, it's Pierce, Chris Bosh. I was about to say Chris Paul. That's not for a couple more years. That's probably another first ballot Hall of Famer, about the point guard. But Chris Bosh, Chris Webber, and Ben Wallace. I believe I could have thought Ben Wallace was already in the Hall of Fame, and kind of the fact that he wasn't in the Hall of Fame already. I don't know if he was first ballot or whatnot, but Ben Wallace, maybe in my opinion, probably greatest. He's definitely one of the greatest defenders of all time, and especially for a guy who was, I believe, 6'8". So LeBron size playing center. In today's NBA, Mans would probably be just a power forward or whatever, but I can just, if he had, he did the most, he didn't really have a whole lot of offense to him, but granted, he can catch lobs and he can do what he needed to do, but you really had him out there for defense. You had him out there to guard guys like Shaq, and he won a championship guarding Shaquille O'Neal and making it to the NBA Finals with those Detroit Piston teams. That that 04 team was just, the fact, it's always fun learning when you're starting to get to know a sport, or just learning something about the sport you like or really love that you didn't know, and then you want to do deep diving research. Like, doing research on this stuff is amazing, and it's such a fun experience. But yeah, Ben Wallace, and then Chris Webber. I don't know why I was gonna say Chris Wallace, but Chris Webber. My thoughts on Chris Webber, it's kind of a career that was kind of cut short. Granted, because I believe he tore his ACL in one of the playoff series after the 02 season. The 02 season, I feel Chris Webber and that Sacramento Kings squad of the early 2000s should have at least made it to one NBA Finals, and could have even won an NBA Finals, because Chris Webber was that dude in Sacramento, and he had the supporting cast with the Mike Bibbies of the world, and the Doug Christies, and the Divacs and all that. I feel Chris Webber, he was definitely somebody who should have won a championship, or at least made it to an NBA Finals. And it just sucks how his career kind of I want to say took a turn for the worse, because he was still productive after leaving Sacramento, but he just couldn't never capture that magic of a championship or even a finals run. But somebody who did win a championship, well, somebody else on this list who won a championship, because 3 out of 4 of these guys are champions anyway. When it comes to Chris Bosh, never really watched Chris Bosh as when it came to his playing days. There was times I did watch him. I didn't watch him nearly as much, because I was usually just watching my Celtics. So whenever the Celtics would play the Heat, or the Celtics would play Toronto when Bosh was still there, it sucks how his career was kind of cut short, and he wasn't officially retired until, I believe, 2018 or whatnot, because I know he was trying to make a comeback, and then blood clots and whatnot kind of held him out. But the fact that he's going to be a Hall of Famer, that just puts a smile on my face. Because Chris Bosh, he was that dude in Toronto. He was that post Vince Carter era, and obviously he didn't capture the imaginations of NBA fans everywhere. But I mean, Chris Bosh was still a really good player, and he was I wouldn't even say he was definitely before his time. Obviously, guys like him and Chris Webber, those kind of big man who can stretch the floor and play like a guard at times. Those guys were definitely before their time. Just imagine. It's always fun to think about that kind of stuff. Just imagine how certain players would play in today's NBA or how certain players in today's NBA would have been tearing the league up back then. But that's neither here or there. So 2021 class, that's fun. That's going to be fun. And I know on the topic of Michael Jordan is going to cameo in Space Jam 2: A New Legacy. In what capacity, I have no idea. I don't know. I feel like it wouldn't have been right if you didn't have MJ in there. And shoot, maybe they can even crack a joke about this GOAT talk and whatnot. I would just say, just to leave it on this, when it comes to the debate of who's the greatest of all time in their respective sports, or even right now, I would say I don't like comparing players from today's generation to back then. Like, Larry Bird gets smoked in the NBA, or LeBron James couldn't handle playing the league with hand checking and how defensive would have been back then. I don't like comparing like MJ versus Michael Jordan and whatnot. It's fun to talk about, but you are never gonna get a clear and concise answer. It's up to your interpretation of the player. That's why people say that Kobe's their GOAT. And it's like, if we're talking about championships, how come Bill Russell isn't talked about more? How come Wilt Chamberlain isn't on a lot of some people's top 10s and whatnot? Certain players get no respect. And certain players get underrated, even though they are some of the all-time greats. It's very hard to talk about when it comes to GOAT talking. When it comes to basketball, anyway. In baseball, it's a lot harder. I would say it's a lot harder to because in basketball you got the 1 and 2, Michael Jordan and LeBron, that whole discussion. And there's plenty of other players. In baseball, it's kind of hard to talk about that, and in football as well, because in football, like, you have to think of a quarterback, and I mean anybody besides Tom Brady. You may have an argument, but I mean, shoot. But yeah, I would say just enjoy the discussions and enjoy the good times that is sports. But hey, and not to mention I can't believe I almost forgot this, but the fact that J. Cole dropped heat when he came to the off season. In fact, I'm about to go listen to more of that right now. So I'll talk about it a little bit more as I keep listening to the album, but 10 out of 10 from me, so just to keep it short. But hey, I'll catch you guys next week. Love y'all. Stay safe.